Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Molly, and today I'm gonna be telling a story time. This isn't the happiest of stories, and it's also not the worst either. It's just something that I've had to deal with and something that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. And if you couldn't tell by the title already, I was recently diagnosed with MS, or multiple sclerosis. I kind of have like a crazy story as to how I got diagnosed, what was happening to me, how I realized anything was wrong, and I had a bunch of issues with misdiagnosis. And let's talk about my story, because this is why I'm here. I want to tell my story. There were a lot of things that bothered me about this whole situation, and I kind of just want to get through it. I want to get it off my chest. I want to bring awareness to other people who might have been in a similar situation, or people who might be in a similar situation one day that may need some advice. So let me just start from the beginning. I have always suffered from anxiety and depression and other mental illnesses, but for the past 5 or 6 years, my anxiety has gotten out of control. I had been back and forth to doctors and therapists, but it was something that I never really stuck with. Medications I had taken, of course, but I never really stuck with it. But I decided a few months ago that I was gonna do it again. I had already been seeing my therapist for a while, and so I told her I want to see the psychiatrist. I actually used to see him years ago, and that was that. So I see the psychiatrist, and he puts me on a medication for my anxiety disorder and for depression. So I had been taking it for a while, maybe a month or two, and it was working really well, but it did get to the point where some of my anxiety was peeking through again. So I asked my doctor if he could increase the dose, and he did, without question. Never forget the day that he increased my dose, because what happened after is why we're here today. So it was March 2nd, 2018. He increased my dosage from 10 milligrams of this medication, and he increased it to 20 milligrams. It was doubled overnight. Exactly 1 week later, I started having very strange and terrifying things happen to my body. At first, I thought I might have a pinched nerve because I was feeling sensations in my left arm and my left leg. I thought I had a pinched nerve in the past. We'll get into why I said it like that, but I was under the impression, let's just say, that I had a pinched nerve on this side probably about a year before this started happening, and that went away, and it wasn't that big of a deal. But basically it was like just a weird, it's hard to explain, but that's when you know it's nerves, because it's just a sensation. It's like numbness and tingling, but also like pressure. It was kind of scary, but that really wasn't a big deal. I thought I had a pinched nerve. I stretched it out. It went away. It was fine. So when I started feeling weird things on this side, I thought, okay, I know I have horrible posture. I'm overweight. I don't do much. I just figured, okay, I have a pinched nerve again, because that's all it felt like. It was a sensation. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable, but it wasn't the biggest deal ever. It was livable, I guess you could say. Unfortunately, that only lasted about a day or two. It started becoming more intense. And when I say more intense, I mean that the only way I can explain it is that it felt like my nerves were attacking me. I guess you could say it felt like electricity. I guess you could call it pain, but the way I described it was that it was not pain, but it felt worse than pain. It was so bad that I couldn't do anything. It seemed that it would happen every time I moved a tiny little bit. So it was my left arm and my left leg. If it was happening while I was walking, I might fall. My leg would get stiff. I was like walking like without bending my knee. It's hard to explain. It really is super hard to explain, because at one point I thought I was having what they call focal or partial seizures. I knew I wasn't having full-blown seizures because I was conscious, but it just felt like it. I could feel like some sort of neurological issue, and I only knew that because I hear my mom talking about neuropathy all the time, because she went through chemo and she's got neuropathy now because of that, and because I thought I had a pinched nerve in the past, and so I was familiar with that weird nerve feeling. However, this was terrifying, and it was like debilitating and horrible. And it only got worse. What ended up happening is I was having involuntary muscle contractions. So everything's still on the left side of my body. However, when it would happen, my hand would close up like this, and my arm would be like this, and my toes on my left foot would curl up like this, and my foot would be like this, and it was just, I could pry it open, but it would whoosh, like a magnet. Was terrifying. So it made it to the point where I literally didn't leave my house, because I actually not just didn't leave my house, I would hold my pee because I didn't want to get out of bed, because I felt like if I just stayed still, like it wouldn't happen. So once it started being that horrible, where my hand was closing and it was something that other people could actually see, how they could actually see something physically happening, I decided to finally go to the doctor. My mom was out of town during this entire thing that happened. She was just kind of like nursing me through the phone, basically. She was helping me through it just through phone calls and FaceTime. So right before I was leaving to go to the doctor, my mom calls me and she goes, "Molly, did you ever think that it could be which is the medication I was taking for anxiety?" Then it clicked. He increased my dosage. He doubled my dosage exactly 1 week before it started happening. So it was like a light bulb went off in my head. This has to be from the medication I was taking. So I go to the doctor and she's asking me all these questions, and I go, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you. My doctor actually increased my dose of this medication 1 week before this started happening." So she tells me, oh wow, okay, so I'm gonna do these labs. It very well could be the medication that's doing this to you. I liked her at first. I had never met her, by the way. That's why I'm saying I liked her. She didn't blame it all on my anxiety, even though she knew I had anxiety. She didn't say anything about my weight. What she wanted to do was to get lab work done right away. And I thought, wow, this is pretty awesome. Like, I like this doctor. I feel like she cares about me. She did tell me that if my symptoms got any worse, which shit, I don't know if they could have got, at that point, I don't know if they could have got worse. If they were worse than that, I probably would have died. That's how bad it was. But she told me if they get worse, then to go to the ER. So I get home from the doctor and I call my mom and I tell her all the details about the appointment and what we're gonna do and all that stuff. And she advises me, she's a very smart lady, that I should start like logging these attacks or episodes in a notebook. And that is this notebook right here. I still have it. I still have everything that I wrote down. I just want to kind of like look at it really quickly. All the underlines are the different times. I would put the date at the top. And as you can see, it was a lot. Some of these have like 3 pages for just one day. So I didn't start it from the beginning of when I was having these episodes, of course. So at the top of it, I wrote medication increased from 10 milligrams to 20 milligrams on March 2nd. And I went to see my PCP on March 19th. So March 20th is actually the day that I started doing this. So it was the day after the doctor that I decided to start doing this. It was nighttime when I decided. The first entry is 9:04 p.m. and it says, attempted to get up from bed to grab paper, mild attack. And so I started writing different terms towards the end, and I got like what terms made more sense to me. It would either be attack or episode, and it would be full episode, meaning that everything happened. So my hand closed up, my toes curled up, I felt electricity, I felt the nerve pain, all of that stuff. So I can't really explain what the difference was, but it was just, if it didn't feel as bad. The whole episode would last about maybe like 20 to 30 seconds, and then it would get better, and then it would keep happening throughout the day. So for example, the second day starts right here at 6:22 a.m. It does say though that I had an episode in the middle of the night, but I didn't log it. Just to give you kind of a reference of like how intense this was and how much it was happening and how it literally ruined my life while it was happening. As you can see, it says 61 total. So 61 in one day. It would happen when I got up to go pee. It would happen when I got up from the toilet to go back in bed. And it was just a huge struggle. It would happen just for me, like adjusting my pillows on my bed. It was intense. It got to a point where it was too hard to always grab my notebook, so I started having audio recordings of the episodes, and you could hear when they were bad. It wasn't video, obviously, but it was just really intense, and you can hear it. And if I can find those, I might have deleted them off my phone, but if I still have them, then I will definitely insert them. I did what any stupid person would do, and I stopped taking them, and it's completely cold turkey. I just stopped taking them. I said, this is poison, I don't want it in my body. So a couple days later, she calls me with the test results, and everything was normal. I had a slight vitamin D deficiency, but it was March in Chicago. So anyway, she prescribes me these like extra strength vitamin D pills. I have to take one every week. There's only 4 in there. And then she wanted to have a follow-up appointment with me. Unfortunately, it just got worse. So all that happened, and it had gotten worse. And if you remember, the doctor told me over and over, if your symptoms get worse, go to the ER. Go to the ER. So finally I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to the ER. My boyfriend dropped me off there, and I tell them what's happening. I actually get seen pretty quickly, which I was surprised. This is where my anger, I get into the little room in the ER that they took me to, and the doctor comes in, and he's kind of young. Immediately, I already had my guard up, because I was already aware that a lot of times when you admit that you have anxiety, then they just kind of want to blame everything on anxiety, and they don't really want to believe that anything's really happening to you. And that's kind of the feel that I got there. So he comes in, and he asks me everything that's been going on. He tells me in his most condescending voice, his most patronizing voice, of course, I believe that you're having real symptoms, but I think that your anxiety could be a part of this. And I looked him straight in the eye, and I was about to shed a tear. And not because I was sad, but because exactly what I was worried about happening was happening. So I told him, listen, I didn't come here a week ago because I knew that people were going to tell me that it was because of my anxiety. And I just think that's ridiculous. And I don't want to be treated like that. And he tells me, no, again, condescending, patronizing. I know, I believe you're having real symptoms. I just think that the anxiety can contribute to it. He basically tells me it could be the medication, but that he's not sure. And I asked him about getting possibly an EEG. Even back then, even being told that they think that it's because of my anxiety medication, I knew that even with the medication, that this is something neurological. So even if it was from the medication, I knew something was happening because I started feeling it coming from my brain. I started feeling it on the left side of my brain. I would get like zaps, and then that would happen. So something that happens with this particular anxiety medication is that they do have something called brain zaps. So he acts like he's gonna go get my paperwork to release me. And there was nothing that was done. I wanted the EEG. I knew that something neurological was happening, and I thought maybe possibly it was focal seizures, but every time I said the word seizure, even though I made sure not to just say seizure, I said partial seizures or I said focal seizures, they just threw it in my face, you're not having seizures. They never took into account that I wasn't saying I was having full-blown seizures. They just said, you're not having seizures, you don't need to see a neurologist. We don't have neurologists in the ER. You would have to make an appointment with one, and we don't have those types of tests in the ER, and I don't want to keep poking you. You've just got all those labs done. He goes out as if he's gonna get my paperwork, and I hear him talking to a woman about me. I know that it's about me because they're talking about the medication that I was taking, and they're talking about my symptoms. And I don't really know what's going on. He made it seem like I was about to leave, but I'm not leaving. No one's telling me what's happening. And then he comes back in and pretty much he goes, yeah, you were right. It's the medication. Basically, those brain zaps that happen from this medication, that's what is causing this. So it's a combination of adverse side effects from the medication as well as withdrawal symptoms because you stopped taking the medication. Still can't get an EEG, doesn't think I need to see a neurologist, it's just the medication. Okay, whatever. So I leave there with nothing except for what I basically already knew, just kind of let it be. I was pissed at the way I was treated. I felt very frustrated. I felt abandoned. I don't know if I mentioned this, but my psychiatrist didn't, when he heard about these symptoms that I was experiencing and that it might be from the medication, he didn't even want to see me in person. He didn't even call me on the phone. He had his receptionist call me, and I never got an appointment with him. So I was completely abandoned. I go home and I'm basically in tears and I'm really upset. At least I thought I knew what was wrong with me, but I didn't know how long it was gonna take. They told me that possibly a week or two more of this. That didn't end up happening. It ended up continuing for probably another month. There came a point where it was time for my follow-up with the PCP. See her, and I'm already upset because of how I was treated at the ER, and I'm kind of letting her know this. And if you remember, I was saying that the first time I met her, I liked her a lot. I felt like she didn't use my anxiety against me. I felt like she did actually want to know what was wrong with me and that they weren't gonna just do the minimum. But when I was sitting there almost in tears telling her that I felt like I was completely abandoned by these doctors and that all I wanted was to see a neurologist, I just want to find out what's happening because I know it's coming from my brain. I know something's wrong with my brain. And she decides to tell me that patients have to understand that doctors went to medical school and they didn't. And that they're not just doing the bare minimum, even though a couple blood tests and you look up on a computer what could be possibly wrong, and that's what you call not doing the bare minimum. I just wanted at that point to see a neurologist just to humor me. Maybe if you didn't believe that anything else was wrong with me, but wouldn't you want to just rule it out? That's how I feel. I did cry a little bit, and it was an emotional time. It was very scary for me. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I knew that something was wrong with my brain. I knew that something neurologically was wrong, and I knew that it was terrifying, and I didn't know why. I got told that it was this medication, but wasn't sure. There was nothing they could do for me if that was the case. There was no counter medication that I could take that would fix it. There was no test for it. There was nothing. They literally just had to figure it out on their own, and there was nothing they could do to help me. It was just supposed to go away. So that was a very frustrating time. And I told you I felt abandoned. I felt like nobody cared about me. I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional. It was just an extremely emotional time. I had never had anything physically wrong with me like that before. I never felt anything like that before. And I never felt like so abandoned and like nobody gave a shit. I've never felt like that as much as I felt from the doctors. And I have been in abusive relationships, and I've been broken up with, and I've had friends like never talk to me again for no reason, and still I never felt uncared for and abandoned like I did after those doctors. So luckily though, the one good thing that this PCP did is that she did give me the referral to the neurologist. Told me I didn't need it, but she gave it to me. So as soon as I leave her office, I call the neurologist's office to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. So I get an appointment, and it was only for like a week later, but crazy timing, right? Things started to get better. It's happening less times in a day, and there's more mild episodes as opposed to full episodes. I would actually have some bad days still, and then I would have days where it like didn't happen at all. So I just knew that it was kind of going away. I just thought it was over because we said it was the medication, and that was it. I was never gonna feel this ever again. But I decided to still go to the neurologist because I had an appointment, and why not? Maybe they could like help explain to me why this medication may have done this, and maybe I can get them to see if it was maybe focal seizures, or if it was something more like neurological than what they were trying to tell me it was. So I see the PA, and this woman was very nice. She asked me every little question. She did all those like little tests where she like shines the light in my eyes. She's doing like the reflex tests and all those things, but then also going a little deeper than that, and like, you know, seeing my reactions to things. And she told me to like take my shoes off and take my socks off so she could see if I could feel things in my feet and things like that. And what she tells me is that what she knows about that medication, some of it sounds like it possibly could be from that, because she has heard some similar stuff, but that most of it was kind of weird, and it could have just completely been a coincidence that I was taking this medication at this time, and that it might be something else, and that she wants a brain MRI immediately. So I scheduled the brain MRI, and I go. It was probably only a couple days later, thank God. And not even 24 hours later, I get a call from the neurologist's PA again, the one who I had just seen. And she tells me that there's something called white matter abnormalities, or maybe she said lesions, I'm not sure. These white abnormalities are basically what they see when they do MRIs of patients with MS. So she told me that the actual neurologist and her both looked through my brain MRI, and because of my age, I'm 28, because I'm young, and if there's the potential to catch it early, they want to do that. So they wanted to do all the other tests like immediately. So she told me that I'll be getting some orders in the mail, that I'm supposed to do a lumbar puncture, aka a spinal tap, that I am supposed to get 2 more MRIs, one of my cervical spine and one of my thoracic spine, and then something called a visually evoked potential test. And that test I haven't actually even done yet. I couldn't get an appointment until July, but in a few minutes I'll explain why that doesn't really matter. So of course I freaked out. I never once thought about MS. I mean, my mom did say in the beginning to make sure they rule out MS, but I did autoimmune labs, and everything was normal except for my vitamin D, like I mentioned earlier. Wasn't really well versed on MS at this time, but I figured that it's an autoimmune disease. It's gonna show up on the autoimmune labs. So I ran to my mom's house, and you know, I told her what was going on, and she basically told me that she'll help me and she'll take care of me, and you know, I just gotta stay strong. At this point, we didn't know yet. She was just letting me know that that's kind of what it looks like when people have MS. It wasn't that I was diagnosed yet, it was just that I had a lot of kind of proof at this point that it may possibly be this. I was convinced it was. I started realizing other things. Like, yeah, I had that crazy thing happen for 2 months, but like, also I get numb. Also I get like the feeling like pins and needles, like when your foot falls asleep, but like all the time. I have major fatigue, and again, I am overweight, I'm out of shape, but most people, even if they're overweight, they can still like go to the corner store for 5 minutes and be okay. Me, I need like a 6-hour nap after that. Just a lot of little things that I didn't really notice before. Like my tongue going numb and me losing taste, and just little things like that. I never really thought of those things as abnormal. I thought maybe I was just weird. I had done bad things in my past. I had done unhealthy things. I was like, oh my God, am I drinking too much? All these things that they could possibly be, but were actually probably most likely actually symptoms of MS. So I get the spinal tap first, and that sucked, but it wasn't as scary as I thought it was. So just if anyone's watching this and they're like gonna get a spinal tap or a lumbar puncture soon, just know it's not as scary as it sounds. It doesn't hurt as much as you think it will. Got 16 milliliters of my spinal fluid. It was completely clear. It was like a couple of different little vials. After a spinal tap, they make you lay there, like you can't leave the hospital yet. For an hour, you have to lay there flat. So like you don't even get a pillow or anything. You have to lay completely flat for an hour because there's this possibility of getting these crazy like migraines. They gave me like a paper with instructions of like what to do afterwards. And one of the things was to drink extra water. I was supposed to come home and like relax. You weren't allowed to like bend over for 24 hours. You had to keep your head up, like you couldn't have your head go down. The problem after that was that my back hurt from it. Not everybody gets back pain really from it, but I did. So I was kind of in bed for like a couple more days after that, but luckily I never got the headaches. So if anyone is getting one soon, just know that it's not as scary as you think. Next, I had scheduled the MRIs of my cervical spine and my thoracic spine. Those were actually on the same day. They were gonna just do them together. After a spinal tap, MRIs are nothing. So it was the day after I got my MRIs of my spine, and I get an email, and it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I see that I had an email from the hospital saying that my results were in on my like online patient portal. Unless you like know about those things, or if you are a doctor or something, like you're not gonna know what it means. So I did call the office. I just wanted to know. I called the office and I told them, hey, I was just wondering if I could speak to the doctor because I got my lab results, but I obviously have no idea what they mean. So if she's there, whatever, or if she could call me back, that'd be great. They told me, yeah, I'll give her a message and she'll call you later. A couple hours go by and I'm in the car. My boyfriend wanted to go get something to eat. So we were in the car on the way to get something to eat, and I knew, just had this feeling, especially since I did call the office in the morning and say that I wanted the results, I wanted the doctor to call me back. So I kind of just had this feeling that at that moment that was gonna be the case. I literally had this like picture in my head of feel my phone vibrating in my purse. I scramble for it. I see that it says the name of the hospital, and I tell him, oh my God, turn it down, turn it down. 2 seconds later, that's exactly what happened. And I answer, and it's my neurologist, and she tells me that my spinal tap had oligoclonal bands, and that is multiple sclerosis. These are not exclusive to MS. You can have those in your spinal fluid for a number of reasons, but basically the presence of those plus lesions in an MRI is what makes it obvious that it's multiple sclerosis. It's like you're prepared as much as you think you're going to be prepared for bad news, but it's just still an emotional thing. So she tells me though that it is a progressive disease, but that with the meds that I could be in remission and that it could be okay. She wants to see me in a couple days, and that the appointment is going to be actually with her and the actual neurologist. So I had my appointment in a couple days, and now it's time to let everyone know what's been going on with me. I had been kind of keeping it quiet. The only people that really knew were my mom, who then told my dad, of course. So my parents, my boyfriend, my best friend, and then another good friend who was also at the same time going through getting diagnosed with a chronic illness. It's very personal. It's also very serious. So I wanted to just make sure that I had all the information before I did anything. So I'm diagnosed now, and so I got this pin, and it says multiple sclerosis. You can't see it, but the ribbon for MS is orange. And Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month is in March, and that is another weird, ironic piece of this puzzle because my symptoms started in March. I don't believe in coincidences. Well, you know, those are the longest couple days of my damn life. Like, I already knew I had this diagnosis, but like, what the hell? And then I get a phone call from them. They asked me if I wanted to come in a day early. So I was like, hell fucking yeah. So I go in a day early and I see them both, and they asked me beforehand to write down a bunch of questions, which I also really appreciated. I wrote them all down in my notes in my phone, and I asked them all the questions, and so basically I have a lot of answers that I can now tell you guys. I have the relapsing remitting kind, and you can't really tell which kind it is until it progresses. So what he said was, I'm pretty sure you have the relapsing remitting kind, and I was already under that impression anyway, because clearly I'm okay right now, besides like my feet falling asleep, or like pins and needles, or, you know, numbness here and there. Those are all due to the fact that I've already had nerve damage from this. So that stuff doesn't go away, but that stuff I can live with. The drugs help to slow down the progression. They told me that there actually wasn't that many lesions in my brain. There was none in either my cervical nor thoracic spine. So they think that they probably caught it early. I did ask them if all of the lesions in my brain happened from that one instance, and they said probably not. There had been times that I probably didn't really notice anything or didn't think much of it, or I could even have been sleeping when it happened, and then that's when I remembered my pinched nerve that I had about a year prior to this. So I'm 90% sure that pinched nerve was not a pinched nerve. The bigger one that I have is on the left side of my brainstem, which is why it was happening on the left side of my body. It's not like as scary as I thought it would be, in terms of like, oh my god, if I get a cold, am I gonna die? It's not necessarily like that. It's just that you do have to be a little more careful. So I chose one of the injection options, but the thing is, I'm not on it yet. I have to do this paperwork. They have to send it off like to the insurance companies or whatever, and then someone's gonna call me next week, I believe. Apparently some sort of nurse is supposed to call me, and they are gonna set up an appointment to come to my house so that they can teach me how to inject myself. I think I get the first injection that day, and they also teach me how to do it myself. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all the information I have so far. I have not started the medication yet, but I'm okay, and that is the most important part about all of this. They told me that I can live a normal life. I just have to be more careful with things, and I have to be on top of everything that I have to do and my medications, and obviously eating healthier, making your body physically healthier helps with all of this. Not that it makes it go away, but just being a healthier person is gonna help me out in the long run. I actually bought this book. It's called The MS Recovery Diet. I'm hoping I can actually get healthier, but this may be the start of actually being motivated for once in my life. And I just want to say that I am okay, and if you have MS, it's not a death sentence, and it doesn't mean that you can't live your life. And I suggest anyone that can to do more research about it, because I've just heard stories of people being diagnosed based on very minor symptoms. And so I think it's important to bring awareness to this disease and to pay more attention to your body. And the number one reason that I wanted to make this video is to let everybody know that you know your fucking body, and you know yourself better than anyone else in the world. Even someone who's studied medicine, even someone who's been studying medicine their entire lives, you know your body more than anyone else in this entire world. And don't let doctors treat you like you don't know what you're talking about. When there's something wrong, you push for that. When I left the neurologist's office, the PA that I had been dealing with, you know what she told me? She told me, thank you for pushing for yourself. Because I would have never known this. I would have had to wait until I had another relapse to see that there was something really wrong with me, and that it wasn't just a stupid medication, and that it just went away. No, I pushed for myself because I know myself better than anyone knows me in this entire world. And I'm not gonna let people push me around, and I hope that you guys do the same. And I hope that you stay strong, and you're all beautiful, and I love you all. And just, I wanna thank you for listening, and have a great day.